Now, a drive-by shooting in front of a low-income housing complex resulted in 13 injuries in Washington, D.C. at around 2:10 this morning. The Washington, D.C. Police Department released this surveillance video today in the hopes of finding the two cars that drove by the crowd of people and rained gunfire upon them. Victims were mostly shot in the legs, arms, buttocks, and were also grazed by bullets. The youngest victim was 17 years old. One person was shot in the back and was seriously injured as a result, though he is expected to survive. Police are still searching for a motive as to why this happened. Now, you can see that the location of this shooting is a mere walk away from the U.S. Capitol building. This shooting occurred in our nation's capital, right near the most iconic building of our government. Yet it appears only in the local sections of newspapers. It is unlikely to receive the same attention as instances such as the Aurora or Sandy Hook shootings. The question we should be asking ourselves is possibly why? And to help me answer that question and more is hip-hop artist and activist Immortal Technique. Hey there. So first question, this incident happened, as I mentioned, just a couple of blocks away from the Capitol, but yet we're not really seeing much coverage of it. What does that say to you?
Well, obviously, people don't think that it's a story that fits in the narrative of America. And this administration is very much for banning guns and having a position that is anti-gun. And I think that they do this because it's a knee-jerk reaction to having to deal with the reality that this is a very violent society inside America, and that even banning guns is not going to end that violence. We are such a violent society because we love violence. We love the violence that occurs towards other people, but not the kind that occurs towards us, which makes us just as selfish as every other human being. First and foremost, I feel very sorry that anybody had to be hurt over some drunken dispute or some revenge, some act of revenge, or whatever it may be that actually occurred that made this incident happen. But I think that, more government involvement really isn't going to be the answer to something like this. As a matter of fact, I think what we need to do as a society is confront the violent nature of America.
Now, every city has its problematic districts. Do we just accept it as a fact of life that bad things happen in those areas? Or should we be doing, obviously you don't think the government should be getting more involved. Should we be doing more individually?
Well, I don't want anyone out there to think that I don't think someone should be involved. But definitely, I don't think the government should come in as a regulator because, the police are going to do what? Come there and clean up a crime scene. They didn't come there to resolve anything. They're not taking rival factions of a neighborhood and having a concrete discussion with them about what their grievances are with one another. Look, this is how it really is, and I'll just say it plainly. If you and I are the audience at home is watching a link of 12 inner-city children, working on computers quietly in a library, hardly anyone's going to click that link. But if you link it to, a dozen urban youth throwing a bunch of computers at one another, people want to see that. They want to see violence. They're not afraid of that violence that doesn't affect them. They're afraid of the random violence that affects them. No one here is scared or terrified of those drone strikes that are going to kill children in Pakistan or Yemen tonight. But they're terrified of the idea of someone coming into a middle school or a junior high school and killing the people who aren't supposed to be killed. Oh my God, 12 little children, that's not supposed to happen. And the majority of them are encoded American language from the parents of hardworking Americans. And I think that's the difference. They're not scared of those people dying because in our society, those people are supposed to die. The children of Gaza, the children of Yemen, the children of Syria, they're supposed to die.
Well, and
but the people here are not supposed to die. And frankly, it scares our society when we have those random acts of violence, when the people that are not supposed to die are dying.
Okay, so the other question that I do want to ask you is, we've talked about the government and police involvement a little bit. There is another realm to it, and this is the realm that the media plays in it. I know that your music often focuses on a sort of trickle-down effect, kind of breaking down all of the different players. Can you break down the different players in this gun violence culture that we have?
Well, look, you have people that are going to take a moderate position. You have people that are going to take a conservative position. You have people that are going to take a liberal position on the gun debate. But again, I go back to the fact that whether it's guns or whether it's knives or whether it's any other killing implement, you know, just dealing with the actual legislation concerning firearms or concerning any other tool, you know, I think that we're still missing the point. We still haven't addressed why we excuse our violent behavior,
so
why we think it's okay to kill somebody.
Who specifically is involved in not addressing this, as you say?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's just mainstream media. I mean, for example, I've known people that work at RT and they say, man, I like working here because we get to cover the stories that the mainstream media won't necessarily touch. You know, I think that when we talk about independent reporting and independent journalism, you get to touch certain stories that are lost in the framework of the debate. You know, the mainstream media is going to go with some story about, you know, Justin Bieber having a bad birthday, you know, and yet who does that affect? But people want to hear it because they've been trained to hear it. They've been trained to hear, you know, the way certain people's names sound. And all of a sudden, the interest in whether they lived or died goes away. Oh, those children died? Well, it must have been something that their parents did that is the responsible for the factor of responsibility and why they had to die. And no one's ever said that about anybody else. So really, it's just more dehumanization on the part of the media as well, which is unfortunate.
It certainly doesn't boil down to only the media, but it boils down to a lot of different factors. And the fact is, we're just not covering these cases of poor neighborhoods where this violence is happening and arguably growing. Hip-hop artist and activist Immortal Technique